Hi everybody, welcome in another series from How a Mere Mortal Can Invest. Today we are going to discuss if it's true when Albert Einstein stated that compound interest is actually eighth wonder of the world. So we will be discussing how it's calculated, we will be discussing some differences, and the reason for that is that in the past few days I've created 2 Czech videos about how to use the pension saving inside Czech Republic and then a new product which is called long-term investment product, and it's a new from 2024 to be used for pension saving. It's quite similar to 40k from United States, but it's not as good, but it's kinda the same. But for you, the most important from these 2 videos is to understand the concept of compound interest and how just a 1% difference can dramatically change over a long time the final value that you can use. So let's start by describing how it is calculated. We won't be going over the theory because you can go over it alone if you want to, so we will rather do it practically. So here we have input data. So there is like a year, we will be calculating just 80 years for simplicity, but then we will do the calculation on top of 35 years. So we're using 8% interest rate. Why 8%? Because usually that's the average appreciation of world shares. In case of S&P 500, it's even in average 10%. Then we are taking into account 2% inflation, 1% fee, which some service may be charging, and then 15% tax. And because I'm from Czech Republic, so I'll be using Czech crowns, so every year we will invest 24,000 Czech crowns. And then we will here discuss if we change slightly parameters, how the calculation and result will change. So in this case, we are calculating interest immediately and we are assuming that these 24,000 were put here at the beginning. Here we are calculating the same, but we assume that 24,000 were put and added into our investment in the end of the period. And the period is where the calculation of interest happens. So you can see here, this is appreciation calculated for first case, and this is appreciation calculated for second case. And you can see it's like moved by 1. But because compound interest is providing the biggest gain close to the end of period, then obviously this small change will have a big impact on the final number. But much bigger impact will have inflation. So if there is inflation, then we can't use so-called nominal interest rate, which is this 8%, but we have to use something which is called real interest rate, and that's interest rate minus inflation. So in this case it would be 6%. So we will see what the inflation will do to our investment. Then we will add into inflation also fee, and again we will discuss the impact. And then finally we will also into inflation and fee add tax from appreciation. Here we are just calculating the appreciation to see the difference, and then every single time how we calculate the next amount. So very simply, we will just take the previous amount, the amount that we added for given year, and then the appreciation from the previous period. And here you will see nicely the difference. If we add this amount within the end of the period, then obviously the appreciation would be 0. Now, in case of inflation, it's calculated exactly the same way, but in these 3 cases, we assume that the amount is being put at the beginning of the interest calculating period. So then here it's simple because we just calculate the 8% increase on this amount. In case of inflation, we just decrease the interest by 2%. In case of appreciation of inflation and fee, we will decrease the appreciation by inflation and fee. And then finally here we are actually removing from 8% interest the 15% from 8%, which is 1.2%. So it's like 8% minus 1.2% minus 2% inflation minus fee. We will see it actually here where we calculate the nominal interest. Now let's see what are the results when we do this compound calculation on 35 years. So every year we add 24,000. We run this simulation through 35 years, and we will just now discuss how these different calculations influence the final value. So if we just take 8% and we immediately calculate the interest, and then you have interest from interest and so on. So effective interest rate here is 8%. It's called nominal because we are not taking into account inflation or fee or tax. So then we will consider this as 100%. So we are investing just 24,000 every year, and after 35 years this number will grow into 4 million and almost 500,000. Now just this slight change that we will be calculating or putting these 24,000 in the end, which means they are not put into calculation for interest. You see that it creates the difference on these 35 years of 7.4%. But these two are still nominal because we just changed when we add this, let's say, money into our investment. Now if we take into account inflation, so inflation, which is real calculation, will actually remove from nominal interest rate 2%, which means the effective interest rate would be 6%. And if something is not growing through 35 years by 8% but just 6%, then in the end we will have 2,800,000 and something. And this is actually the decrease of 36.5%. So you see that it's actually we just removed 2% from growth, and it's so huge difference. Now if we also remove a fee, which is another 1%, then we already decreased by 49%, and effective rate is 5% obviously, 8 minus 2 minus 1. And if we also have to tax our appreciation every year, then effectively we will have just 3.8%, which is, against this first number, depreciation of 60.5%. So if I show this to you on actually graphical representation, so you would see that this highest bar is actually this blue, which means like the nominal grow by 8%. And if we compare it against just inflation, so you see that it's a huge difference, that just the inflation itself after 35 years is going to depreciate the value of your money a lot. And if you also add extra fee and some taxes, then you see that the difference between this and this is like pretty huge. So what does it mean? Currently in Czech Republic, the only thing which we were able to use besides investing directly into exchange traded funds and so on, but if we wanted something which is state secured and state supported, then we were able to use only pension saving. And these companies inside pension saving were actually charging 1% per year and also 15% from appreciation fee, which is actually like this last case. And this means that it simply took away 60.5% of the value that we can use after 35 years. There is a new product from 2024, for example, Porto is offering it, and at least in case of Porto, the fee is just 0.5%. Now, if you realize how big is the effect of just 2% on a growth of money, then obviously if the fee is smaller, then it's much better for you, because after 35 years of such investment, you will have much more money that you can use. And now we will discuss what is actually and why is there this difference in between nominal and real value. In reality, if you would be saving this 8%, you really end with this amount, which means 4,466,000. But because of inflation, you have to take into account the growth of prices. So in reality, you will have this amount of money, but you will be able to buy the same that you can buy today with just 2,834,900. This is the magic of inflation. And of course, if you add there extra fee, which is being charged by a lot of mutual funds, then again, the real buying power will be today's 2,276,000 and so on. But let's check how does it look like. But before that, let me show you how you can actually calculate something like that on the internet. So let's actually switch into compound interest and let's see if we can do something about it inside our browser. Okay. Let me reopen my browser, navigate into and translate it for you into English. Just give me a second. Great, and we are here. So, here if we want to calculate, we were discussing what is the difference at the beginning and at the end of the period. And if we would try to recalculate what we had, let's say 8%, we will state that it's 8 periods, that our regular payment was 24,000, at the beginning there was 0, and we see that this number would be matching the one from the Excel. So this is how we can check it, and I'll of course put this link into the description of the video. But now let's check what is the difference and why is there this difference in between nominal and real value, and why companies are actually showing us nominal, which usually looks much bigger, but it's deception, because in reality after some time we have to account for inflation. So let's check. Nominal versus real interest rate. Nominal interest rate, interest without fee and inflation most often presented to people. Real interest, interest where inflation and fees are accounted for, more realistic. If we save 24k per year with 8% compound interest and 35 years, then it will create 4,466,451, which is nominal value in Czech crowns. On the other hand, if we are smart, then we know we have to take into account inflation. So the same 24k over 35 years with 8% interest rate and 2% inflation will create just 2,834,000 and some small change. So how is this possible that we will end with smaller amount of money? Because we have to distinguish in between nominal and real interest rate, and that will create a big difference. It's important to remember that he will not get the money until 35 years from now. And in the meantime, inflation will raise all the prices of goods and services, so we will buy less in 35 years. In other words, it's true that in nominal value we have 4 million and almost 500,000, but that's value after 35 years. So we have to take inflation into account and recalculate it into today's time. And in today's time it will be just 2,800,900. So that's the magic of compound interest, but also magic of inflation, which will depreciate the value of money, or we can say it will increase the prices. So we have to be aware of that.